Hello, I'm Lucas, and this is a bit of lit. Let's do a February wrap-up. I missed a week of reading because I was depressed. As you might well know, I live in Shanghai right now, and we are in lockdown because of the coronavirus, which has slowed the rate of spread, which I am very thankful for. But my computer broke down, and given everything that I'm dealing with here, a bleeding wallet, being locked in, essentially. It's not too strict here, but like it is in Wuhan, from what I understand, but in the Hubei province in general. But yeah, my computer breaking, I'd rather have that than get the coronavirus or get the flu or anything else, so I am grateful for that. But it is the last thing I needed, because I know what the problem is. I could easily fix it, but I can't right now. I can't afford to do that, because I don't know when I'll be working again. But I talked about that last video. Let's stay positive and not depress myself again. I don't remember if I read this in January or not, but if not, it's worth mentioning anyway. I read Dreyer's English by Benjamin Dreyer, An Utterly Correct Guide to Clarity and Style. I have talked about this book before, I think, for the January wrap-up, but I can't remember. But either way, it's a book about grammar to help you understand a copy editor's mindset and to help you write better, and it's worth your time if you're interested. Okay, throwing books on my bed. The first thing I know that I finished this month is Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron, which is these young Florentine Italians go to the countryside of Florence, and for 10 days they all tell a story. There's 10 of them, so 10 stories a day, and get 100 different stories, and they all take turns being king or queen. And this book is amazing. This edition is great. The translation can be a little weird at times, but there's all kinds of deceit and love and lust and all kinds of sorrow and joy and just everything, redemption and altruism and all kinds of things. It is a great work of art, and this has a great introduction. It's about 100 pages, I think, and a lot of endnotes to help contextualize everything for you, and this is a great edition if you're interested. Maybe the translation is not great, I don't know, but I only had one problem with it, involving Tom, Dick, and Harry in medieval Italy. A little weird, I think, but nonetheless, that's what happened. Another book I read is The Book of Swords, Part 1, edited by Gardner Dozois, with stories by K.J. Parker. His story was fantastic. Robin Hobb, her story blew my mind. It's set in, it's about Torah. It's called Her Father's Sword, and it's set in the world of one of her series. I can't remember the name of it, but it deals with the Forged and these sort of raiders came and attacked Torah's town, and she's a small girl, and they took some loved ones, and the what is that called? The main character, or the king's bastard son, whose name I'm forgetting, came as an envoy. He was going to Shrike to deliver some poisoned bread to try and get rid of these raiders and this problem. And he left him a warning saying, if your loved ones come back, they won't be the same. And if they want something, they will take it. And it's fantastic. Ken Liu had a great story. Matthew Hughes will not talk about that story. It had Riddles in the Dark Hobbit thing, and I didn't really like it. Kid Elliot, a great story. All these stories were fantastic. The highlights for me, the best ones, most of this book I really enjoyed, except the Matthew Hughes story. I thought it was not on par with the rest of them. It was okay, but all of them were pretty great in their own respect. But the highlights for me were C.J. Cherry's Shirai, I don't know how to say her name, I'm sorry. Hrunting, which tells the story about the generation after Beowulf and the search for the sword after all that commenced there. The sword being Hrunting that was given by Hrothgar, the king, to Beowulf to fight Grendel, or Grendel's mother. I'm now forgetting. Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say, but that was a great story, and Robin Hobb's story, and Kenlu's too. And of course, I read part 2, The Book of Swords. I was not as big a fan of it. There were a lot of things I really appreciated. I liked Ellen Kushner's story and Scott Lynch's story. Rich Larson, I didn't really like it. It was pretty foul-mouthed, which I can be, and I need to not be, but it just felt kind of lazy. Elizabeth Barron had a solid one. I think La Vie Tidars was interesting too, and Cecilia Holland had a fantastic story, but the highlight, of course, would be George R. R. Martin's story, Sons of the Dragon, which talks about Maegor the Cruel and his, Maegor Targaryen the Cruel and his reign as king, written from the perspective of a maester. In Westeros, in the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I had read a couple chapters of A Game of Thrones, the first book, years and years ago, because I was a fan of the show, and I stopped because I realized, oh wait, he's only written 5 of the books, and there's supposed to be 7, I think. And so I'll just wait for that. And it has now been like 6 years or something since I read the first couple chapters of that book. And I enjoyed it. I didn't really get it. It was harder for me to imagine than just watching the show, I suppose, which is kind of the point. But, man, it was a fantastic story. I had mentioned that I would read, this is John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is in this annotated Milton thing, which I did not do because I didn't read for a week. I didn't really do anything. I just laid around, and that was too much time. Maybe a day, but I was out of my mind, off my rocker, so to speak. And let's talk a little bit quickly about some videos that I did for other readings. Another book that I started, I haven't finished it, but it would be the first thing I finish, is Go Down Moses by William Faulkner, because the Codex Cantina has been doing a read-along. Yeah, and everything I mentioned in here, except Go Down Moses, I have done discussions about, so I will leave a link for all of them, which is going to take me forever to put in, but that's okay. For Poetry Thursday, we had 4. And the first one was Because I Could Not Stop for Death, requested by my good friend who gave me the tradition of Poetry Thursday. And now I give it to you. That poem is by Emily Dickinson. It's a fantastic poem about death and life and everything. And then, of course, Caged Bird by Maya Angelou to celebrate Black History Month. A little late because I didn't do something for the first week, but I made up for it, I feel like. And that's a fantastic poem about well, just go watch that video. The Loss of Love by Countee Cullen. The Caged Bird has to do with the Black experience, I suppose. in America, the loss of love, not necessarily about the Black experience, just about human emotion that we all feel. And that's why I chose it, because it's something relatable. And then, of course, to end, just the other day, I did The Lynching by Claude McKay. I picked that one to give a kind of an idea of that lynching is not that far gone from our past as an evil tradition. And with the generational aspect of it, near the end of the poem, traditions carry on, even if they change, which it doesn't necessarily mention, but even if they change, traditions like that carry on to younger generations, and on and on and on. And then some short stories. Oh, I also read Spillover by David Quammen, which is about zoonotic viruses, zoonosis, viruses that travel from an animal to humans in any number of ways. Because of the coronavirus, really, I was just reading things that made me think of the virus. I don't know why. That was a great book, though. I recommend it. And I read some short stories in the Milton Crane 50 Great Short Stories, 50 Great American Short Stories collection. The Adventures of the German Student by Washington Irving, which was completely wild and sold me on Washington Irving. That is a fantastic story. Man of the World by Hemingway. That might have been in January, but it's not a good Hemingway story, and it's just mediocre in general, and it's got all the problems I have with Hemingway in it. But it's written just fine. It's just kind of, if you like Hemingway, you might like it, but I don't. And I didn't like it. But I do like Hemingway sometimes. Very rarely. And then, of course, we had The Fiddler by Herman Melville, which was a good, fun story about fame and being, yeah, I can't think right now. It's 3 a.m. But it was a good story about this guy searching for fame and not getting the respect he thinks he deserves. And, of course, I think the last story I read was Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is completely wild. And, yeah, I believe that's everything I read. Oh, just one more thing. I made another thing I did this month was a video about paratext, which is everything inside of a book that's not the text itself. For example, in the Decameron, these pages would be the text. The translator's introduction would not be the text. That would be paratext. This thing, paratext. Even, this or this, well, that is part of the text, actually. That's a quote from the thing. But this part in white is paratext. And the footnotes in the back, as long as they're not put in the back by the author, would be paratext. And I wanted to know, how do you handle paratext? Do you read it? Do you ignore it? How do you read it? And things like that. And that would be my wrap-up. I've gone on for long enough. Thank you. Goodbye.